This is Pod Populi.
Podcast for the people.
The fact that ayahuasca was even discovered is incredible because there's 80,000 vines in the Amazon forest, which is where they come from.
To put those two together.
But you have to put those two together.
Correct.
Because one is an MAO inhibitor, and if you didn't take that, the psychedelic effects would not work.
Correct.
And the other one creates psychedelic effects.
Individually, they do nothing.
Exactly.
Together.
So the fact that the universe told whomever to use these two specific vines should tell everyone all they need to know right then and there.
Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. Welcome aboard the Max Afterburner podcast, brought to you, powered by the No Fallen Heroes universe. In the Gucci studio today, got my brother Michael Morgan with me. We're going to dig into it, law enforcement officer, and who's found the medicine, and we're going to dig into that. A couple things to cover real quick. Huge tragedy in the hockey world. Johnny Hockey, man. Johnny Gaudreau played for the Columbus Blue Jackets, and his brother Matthew, both kids from Jersey. I'm from Jersey. They were back in Jersey last night for their sister's wedding, and they were both killed by a drunk driver. I mean, the hockey world is just absolutely devastated. Two good kids went to Boston College, won the Hobie Baker, which is given to the best individual performance out of a collegiate player. Man, just I can't even. God bless their souls. God, the parents, are you kidding me? And the sister. Give us a little bit about your background, man. So the accent obviously gives it away from Long Island.
Very subtle. Yes.
Yeah.
First of all, it's an honor and privilege to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, man.
That being said, yes, New York accent cannot hide this thing. As we were just speaking about, I thought about hiring a linguistics coach to get rid of it, but I think it's here to stay.
That's cool. You said linguistics coach, and it was clear. It wasn't that bad. So you're getting there.
Exactly. So I'm born and reared on Long Island, New York, North Belmore, more specifically, which is a suburb of Nassau County, the western portion of Long Island, South Shore. I was raised there with my family, my parents and my sister. Graduated from Hofstra University in 1991. Fun fact, I played hockey there with John Cooper.
No kidding.
The head coach of Tampa Bay Lightning. We were teammates for a year.
Holy crap.
Yeah, John had played D1 lacrosse at Hofstra, exhausted his 4 years of eligibility. I think he got a master's in his fifth year or so. He played hockey. He was actually a phenomenal hockey player, too. Great athlete. Just a great guy.
Seems like a good dude.
Yeah, really good guy. It was just so funny. When he came back as head coach, I had no idea that he had become such. And Butch Goring, on the lead into Tampa Bay coming back and playing the Islanders, said he wanted to welcome back John Cooper. Did a triple take. Head coach, I looked at him like, oh my God. I mean, just unbelievable work by him. Just he's leading an unbelievably charmed life, but he deserves it. Great guy, super intelligent, and it seems like his players would love to play for him, which is huge.
Yeah, well, I'm a Panthers fan, so I can't stand the Lightning, but he seems like a good dude. We took care of him this year.
Exactly. Congratulations to you guys.
Yeah.
I wanted that series to go 11 games. I did not want it to end.
It almost did, man.
Yeah, it really did.
Who was it? The coach, Paul Maurice, said we had to lose 3 in order to win 4.
Yeah.
I mean, what a great series. That was just epic.
Oh, yeah. It was so resilient on his team's behalf and not quitting. Same thing with Oilers. They were down 3-0, came back.
Clawed back.
Connor McDavid's the best hockey player I've ever seen in my life, personally. That's my opinion. I love watching him play.
Yeah.
Even off
He's a
puck,
treat.
I watch him, and that's rare.
No, he's making things happen when he doesn't have the puck. He's cool.
I've never seen skating ability like that in my life.
Yeah, he's cool.
God bestowed a gift upon him.
Amen.
And he's doing well with it.
All right, so hockey, Hofstra, and then what happened?
Yeah, so I graduated from Hofstra with an accounting degree, and I got a job with a firm in Manhattan. So I graduated in May, got a job in early October. First day of work, you're supposed to be really excited. It's, first day of the rest of your life. You're starting this new thing you work so hard for.
Yeah.
So I go in, I meet a bunch of people. I'm given a task at about 11 a.m., and I end up falling asleep with my head in my hand. Woke up. It wasn't too long. I looked over at the guy that was training me. He was kind of a strange guy. We really didn't hit it off too well. So I walked around to another guy that I met, and I said, what's up, brother? You like this stuff? He's like, F no, I hate it. I'm like, there is no way I'm sitting in a cubicle for the next 30, 35 years of my life, making no difference to anyone. No one's going to know whether or not I lived or died other than my close family and friends. And just kind of went deep introspective about what I wanted to do. And the answer became very clear to me. It was law enforcement. At the time, I wanted to apply to the FBI, but they were in a federal hiring freeze, which I think lasted.
The early 90s, man, was... We had the wall fall down, so I graduated in 91 too, and I wanted to fly jets for the Navy, and everything. Hey, we got a peace dividend. The Russians aren't, or the Soviets aren't our enemies anymore, and they cut the number of pilot slots in half. I'm like, whoa! So everything, the government just kind of pulled everything back.
Yeah, it was amazing to see, and I was just. I looked at the timing. I'm like, it had to happen just now. This couldn't have happened couldn't have waited a year and started in 92.
Exactly.
And I think it lasted to 97 or 98. So it was a while. Yeah. It wasn't like they did it for 2 or 3 years.
Correct. Yeah.
So at that point, I just had to pivot. I had met the brother of a good friend of mine who was working for Pan Am at the time. Pan Am had gone bankrupt. Delta picked up his entire welding shop, brought them down south to Atlanta, and he loved it. He's like, it's very young. They're building up for the Olympics. I just bought a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, a half-acre built-in pool, $105,000, $5,000 down. God, I said, you know what, brother? I have to get out of New York. I want to see something new anyway. I'm going to apply to Atlanta Police Department, get police experience while I'm waiting for the feds to start hiring again. And that was it. I applied in
Long Island to Atlanta. It's like the Beverly Hillbillies or something like that, man.
It's weird. It's the deep South, but it's a very cosmopolitan city.
Yeah.
You see very trans. You see people from all over the place. You'll get referred to as a Yankee, which kind of took me by surprise when I went down there. I'm like, wasn't the Civil War over quite a while ago? But it's just a term you don't hear in the North, and all of a sudden you go down south.
A Yankee.
A Yankee. So it was a great move. I loved it. I went into the Atlanta Police Academy in August of 93, got out about mid-April, and here's how crazy Atlanta was. So my first night out of the academy, I'm getting field trained. I'm doing a midnight. It's 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. chart. We start at 11 p.m., 12 a.m., I get called to, it wasn't our call, but my FTO brought us over to the first homicide that I've ever seen. And it's a crazy story. It was an Atlanta fire captain who was on suspension for sexual allegations with younger girls. So I'm sure they have been confirmed after this incident. He decided that he wanted to pick up a prostitute that night. He goes, gets a 16-year-old prostitute, then decides he wants to smoke crack, so he goes up to a corner where the local dope boys selling. I am assuming he places his order. The kid selling drugs looks in the car, and who does he see but his 16-year-old cousin? Pulls out a gun, puts one on the guy's head. So I get there, there's brain matter everywhere.
Oh, my God.
My first hour.
How old are you?
I was
early
25.
20s? Yeah.
25. So I can't say I wasn't prepared for what was coming, but...
That's your first night?
First night. First hour.
First hour
Within
of your
the
first
60 minutes, my first homicide. Doesn't end there. 4 hours later, my FTO decides he wants to take a nap. We worked 5 and 2, so it's 5 8-hour tours. And in addition to that, we were very... not well compensated, so we had to work extra jobs on the side.
Of course.
So most guys typically were working minimum 60-hour work weeks, and these midnight guys especially would be exhausted. So we pull in what was at the time Atlanta Fulton County Stadium where the Braves played. It was right across the street from Turner Field. At that time, it was actually getting constructed for the Olympics. And we just pull in a parking lot. Now, I am in the most violent city in America. I worked in Zone 3, which is the most violent part of that city. And he just reclines his chair and goes to sleep. I have my head in a swivel, Wiz. I'm like, I can't believe this guy's sleeping. And with that, a few minutes later, dispatch raises us for a 50-4, which is a shooting in an ambulance en route. Before I could say his name, he inclines his seat, puts the car in drive, hits the gas, and copies the call. I was like, holy shit, this guy's Superman. He was snoring and instantaneously did all that.
Been there before.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why he's a training officer.
Exactly. Veteran move. And I was able to do the same eventually, but I don't know if I should be bragging about that. But so we get to the second scene. Guy's in the middle of the street, on his back, face up, eyes wide open. It was a little bit cold that night. We had some rain, so there was a little bit of smoke kind of coming off his body. And one thing that always struck me, I don't know how many homicide scenes I've been to, but I always in my head would look at the body and be like, man, this guy was alive and living his life 2 to 3 minutes ago.
He didn't wake up today thinking this was going to happen.
Exactly. This was it. You know, it was drug related. It was actually in an area called Smith and Bass Streets. It's 2 intersecting streets. And it's the only place in my zone anyway where heroin was sold. It was so weird. It was like they divvied up these different areas, and heroin was not really that big at that point, so you didn't have a huge consumer demand. But it was the only place that heroin was like exclusively sold.
System, man, it's a business. They figured out,
Exactly.
Wow.
You know, their business plan, mission statement, like anyone else.
That's your first night.
That was my first night, and I remember turning to my buddy O'Neill. We were academy mates. He was getting trained by the guy who had the next sector over. I looked at him. I'm like, O'Neill, what the hell did we get ourselves into? You know, I wasn't naive by any stretch of the imagination, but the amount of violence, death, devastation that I experienced in that department was nothing that I could have ever imagined.
Wow.
You know, that being said, I loved the action. Absolutely loved it.
All right, so we're going to take a quick break to pay some bills, and we're going to find out what happened after his first night in the rest of his law enforcement career. So we'll be right back. All right, first night behind you. How long was your law enforcement career?
So it was just about 30. It was 29 and change total.
So you had 30 years of that first night, more or less.
I would say the first 10 and change in Atlanta were like that. When I went up to Suffolk, it was definitely not like that.
That's right, you transferred. So you left Atlanta.
Left Atlanta in 03, went up to Suffolk County, essentially my hometown police department. And I remember getting out of the academy, and I worked in the second precinct, and one portion of that was called Huntington Station. And I always heard how bad it was. It was so violent. You know, there was a lot of gang activity. And there was, but I was driven through it the first day on the job through my from my field training officer. And I'm like, this is it. This is much nicer than the nicest part of Atlanta that I had worked.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
Yeah. So
wow.
It was nothing comparatively speaking, but still you had everything you had in Atlanta on a smaller scale where I worked.
Sure. All right, so 30 years in law enforcement, man. So clearly a lot of trauma, a lot of PTSD. Did you lose any brothers or sisters?
No one, thank God, no one close to me. There were officers that were killed. One night I was working, and an officer was killed on the 75-85 viaduct. He was conducting a traffic stop or handling a car accident. He got hit and struck, killed by another car. So, yeah, I was at a lot of scenes where maybe officers were hurt. A good buddy of mine was in a shooting. I was not at that scene. He almost died. WT, thank God he didn't. I love you. So, yeah, it was a bunch of carnage on a daily basis.
Oh, my God. And seeing what people can do to another human and children, too, right? I mean, just...
Yeah, children just... It's just another class of devastation. You know, I remember my very, very tough call for me. I'd gotten a call of a unresponsive 11-year-old. I walked in a house. There's an 11-year-old on his back, unresponsive in the living room. His mother, his aunt, and his grandmother there. Obviously, they're all very, very emotional, screaming. I felt him. He was cold to the touch. I knew he was dead already. There was nothing I was going to do to save him at that point, but there was no way I was not going to start working on him. So began giving him CPR. And as I'm doing so, I could hear liquid in his chest, and it was coming up further and further. At one point, I turned him on his side, and a bunch of liquid spilled out. And I didn't have that much of a medical background at that or training at that point, but I'm like, that should not be there. Just then, the FD rolls in with paramedics. I looked at them, and it turns out he had bacterial meningitis he had just died from.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, so it was just horrible. I actually had to... Two of the women went in the ambulance with the child, and then I had to provide transportation to the hospital. I forgot who it was, and you know, she just kept asking me, "Officer, tell me he's going to be all right." And I know he's not going to be all right, but I'm like, "Ma'am, I promise you, they're working him as hard as they can." You know, what are you going to do in that?
What are you going to say?
All you want to do is be somewhere in the world other than where you are at that point.
Oh my God, man!
Such heartache. And had I not had to have gotten, I had to get a dose of antibiotics. And I was essentially told to quarantine myself for 48 hours. They said there was no big risk. Usually kids cannot transmit it to adults, so I wasn't worried about that. But had that not been the case, I would have left that hospital, gone back in service after that call. And no one speaking to me.
Oh, my God.
Here you go, bro. Great. Next call up.
Yeah.
You know, how do you... You can't just recover from that.
Do they teach you at all to process any of this trauma, or is it just, hey, on to the next call? Or do they pay lip service like, hey, because you got to man up, man. You're not going to, hey, I can't hack this anymore.
No,
It's the culture.
Exactly.
Right? What about, dealing with the trauma? Any drinking, any drugs, any bad living, or how'd you deal with 30 years of what we're talking about?
I guess when I was young, and we need to get this word out of our vernacular, but I would compartmentalize it.
Yeah.
And when we say that, it sounds like it's a fancy psychological term, and we put it in a box and we lock it and it's not coming out again.
Yeah.
No, that's not it, man. We bury it.
Yeah.
And eventually it's coming out.
All those boxes we bury. And then
Hundreds.
one day, it's a jack in the box.
Yeah.
They're all going to open.
It's exactly what happened to me.
Yeah.
I thought it was great at compartmentalizing until I wasn't. And that day, I'll never forget. But no, I wouldn't say at that point I had dulled the pain with drinking or anything like that. We go out with the boys. I was relatively young, so we party on the weekends, no drugs or anything like that. I did develop a opioid habit. This is in about 2010. I was married. This was my first marriage. It really wasn't going well. She wasn't getting along with my family. My family wasn't getting along with her. I was trying to make everyone happy. No one was happy. I was miserable. And I've been prescribed. I've had back issues for pretty much most of my adult life. And I always took the medication as prescribed. But at some point, I realized that it was dulling everything around me. All this pain, just everything that was going on. And I started taking more and more of it until I started having seizures. It was called Tramadol. And you could, at the time, buy it online. So I would get it through my doctor, and then if I ran out, I'd buy it online as well.
Oh.
And at some points, my habit got up to where I was taking over 50 pills a day.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, I had multiple seizures. At one point, my ex-wife was in Europe, and I remember taking something out of the shelf. I was walking over to the counter. My Rottweiler is right next to the counter. Next thing I woke up. I have no idea how much time had expired. I'm upstairs in our closet, removing her clothes, putting them on our bed. So my face, left side of my face is really hurting. I go inside the bathroom, look in the mirror. I must have seized, but fallen on the countertop on my left side. Luckily, I didn't kill myself, because that easily could have happened. My eye was shut. My dog was under me. Thank God nothing happened to her, because had I hurt her or killed her, I couldn't have lived with myself.
Wow.
And still didn't stop me. Luckily she was away. It was January, so there was not a lot of vacation going on at work. So I just called in 5 days of vacation, disappeared from the world for 10 days. My face blew up like a tick, black and blue. It was just amazing, but that didn't stop me. And what would happen was, I knew at one point, not that I justified it, but I'm like, this stuff is available online. It's not that bad.
Doctors prescribe it.
Yeah,
it must
exactly.
be okay.
But I knew in the back of my head, I'm like, bro, you're addicted.
Of course.
And what I would do is I would wean myself off till I got down to about 3 or 4 pills. But then that feeling would just be magnified again, the intensity, and I loved it. And it was doing what it was doing as well, masking the pain of what was going on around me. Until one Sunday night, I had a seizure. My wife had come downstairs. She went, got the neighbors, and they came over. I asked to speak to her, and I said, I can't stop this. I need help. Yeah. And I just surrendered at that point. She called my cousin. He came over about midnight on a Sunday, humiliating, told him what was going on. The next day, all 3 of us drove to my parents' house, had to tell them what was going on. It was just so embarrassing and humiliating. And I ended up going into a rehab facility. And I remember the first night I had 3 roommates, and I'm just kind of awake looking at them.
You're on the police force, right?
Still on the police force.
Atlanta or up in...
I was, at this point, this is Suffolk County Police Department,
okay.
so I'd gotten that job in 2003.
Okay.
And as luck may have it, I had a back injury at this point, so I was light
duty?
Not light duty. It's called 401, so it's when you get injured on duty. I was out of work at that point.
Okay.
So I didn't tell anyone. I just went into the rehab. Originally, I wanted to do an outpatient. The owner of that facility was good friends with my ex-wife's uncle. They deemed it a little dangerous because how much I was taking. They wanted to wean me off slowly, so they actually told me it would be much better to go in and do in person, which I agreed to. The craziest thing about it, though, is Blue Cross Blue Shield said they never had an incident of someone addicted to Tramadol. So there was like an upper echelon phone call involving Blue Cross executives and the owner of this facility, and they didn't want to pay at first. And she told me, I'm like, well, tell them that I take almost 50 a day sometimes, and I've had 8 seizures. So, I'm ruining my life right now if they can help. And they agreed, went in, did what I had to do, corrected everything. This is the first time I'm ever admitting it publicly. I've forgiven myself. It was embarrassing and humiliating at that point, but that does not encompass me. It's something I did. It's in the past.
Yeah.
I recovered from it.
Exactly.
One beautiful thing, though, is that going forward now, when I'm working with first responders and vets, if they have a substance abuse issue, I know exactly what you're going through.
I've been there.
Yeah.
My brother Slider, who flew Tomcats and accidentally took 12 innocent Iraqis out and opiates and drugs and suicide attempts. He actually has a sentence now. He says, "I'm thankful for my suffering," because he actually used it, right, to get to where he is today.
Yep.
What was that dark night of the soul moment for you? When was the just spiral in the drain moment?
I don't know if I ever had it until I admitted to her that I needed help. But I remember being in a facility, rehab facility, first night, and I've never done another drug in my life. So, if this, number one illustration, if this could happen to me, this could happen to anyone.
Great point.
I
Law
was
enforcement,
anti-drug, athlete, anti-drug my whole life, and I was crying. I'm like, how did I get here? It was just so humiliating. I'm like, I should not be here.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a little ego talking. Yeah, maybe a little bit of ego there. In one respect, who am I? Why couldn't it happen to me? I put myself on that road.
Yeah.
But I vowed it would never happen again. And I had a couple of slip-ups, very minor after I got out. But, that's it. I'm done. I'll never be back to that point again. And in speaking to men and women now, I tell them, you have to, whatever pain you're going through, you have to go through it. You have to feel it. You can't dull it.
Yeah.
You have to heal from it. You come out on the other side stronger and more resilient. You're able to heal yourself. You could go help others if that's what you want to do, if that's your mission, like it became mine. Or, you know what? You healed yourself, your family, because you're bringing your family is going through everything with you, whether or not you realize it, as you know.
Yeah.
And, one thing that I feel so bad about was that in a relationship, you need to bring consistency to your partner, and I was not doing that. And it was so unfair.
Up and down, and
she didn't know what she was getting. Yeah, she signed up for this mic,
and
now she's getting this mic, and that's not right.
Yeah,
it's not right to do to someone.
Wow. Well, that's why No Fallen Heroes Foundation. We also give healing grants to the family members too, because they serve as well.
Yeah, it's phenomenal what you guys do.
The only way through it is through it.
Exactly.
Right? And that peace that you're looking for is on the other side of the pain that you don't want to face.
Yep.
Right? If this was easy, everybody would do it. Everybody would be healed and the world would be an incredible place. Wow. All right. So let's take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to figure out how and when the medicine called to Morg and how he got to being the incredible human being that he is today. We'll be right back. All right, man. So before we even dig into the medicine work, there's a sentence that I use now that 5 years ago, Wiz, if I had used this sentence, I'd kick my own ass, right? The medicine calls to you. Tell us how you went from 30 years in law enforcement to sitting here today being a plant medicine advocate for first responders, veterans, and everybody, essentially, right? So talk us through the medicine calling to you.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'm going to go back a couple of years, and I was watching Sean Ryan podcast. He's a former SEAL, former CIA contractor.
Great American.
Yeah, he really is. Got a very popular series on YouTube, and he interviews a lot of special forces guys, a lot of SEALs. And they've been talking about healing, coming back, broken men from war, substance abuse issues, PTSD, depression, TBIs. And they're speaking about these plant-based medicines that they're healing from. And, I was watching it, but I didn't think it had really applied to me. So, additionally, let me backtrack. I had injured my back September 22nd of 2020 at work. Herniated 4 discs. First 6 months, we tried conservative treatments. They did not work. So I had a laminectomy in April of 2021 that was going to cure some of what was going on. And my neurosurgeon told me that I was probably going to need a spinal fusion down the line. Oof. It was the original surgery wouldn't correct everything, but we were going to try to put that off as long as possible. So Had the laminectomy, recovered, went back to work in October of 22 for literally 3 days. I was on a desk light duty, and I just could not bend over the desk and type and write. I just could not sit at a desk. And I went to my CO, and he was a great guy. And I said, Inspector, I just want to let you know this is going on. And, you know I'm not a punk. I'm not faking this.
Yeah.
If
not
I could,
malingering.
Exactly. I'm like, I would love to be on the street. Number one, I hate being on a desk. If I could, I'd be on the street again. I'm a street cop. And he understood. I went back out. A few months later, received a spinal fusion. At that point, essentially, they told me they weren't going to put me on the street again. I was 54 years old with a spinal fusion. They medically retired me in October of 22. So during those 2 years, I was long-term line of duty injury. I was not allowed to work. I couldn't volunteer. I couldn't go to the gym. They watch you. They'll videotape you.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's amazing. They'll videotape you and present evidence. If you look like you're getting in the car too smoothly, they'll say, see, he's not injured, he's getting in the car smoothly. So you could literally do nothing. Although I had, obviously, confirmed MRIs, 2 surgeries. Yeah. They still do what they do. So
isn't it incredible you go from a 30-year career being trusted, an officer of the court, an officer of the law, and in the blink of an eye, you're doing something. They assume you're doing something wrong. It's like the VA.
Yeah.
I went from having a top secret, special compartmented information clearance one day to the next day, like, you're a liar about everything. Prove to us that these things are wrong with you. I'm like, holy shit, man. You go from that much trust to that much distrust.
Yeah.
That quickly.
Yeah.
They chew you up and they spit you out.
It's a sobering fact. And one you must realize, I tell the young guys, you could be the king of the hill one day. One mistake, man, they will bury you.
Gone.
So be careful about falling in love with this job because it'll break your heart.
Oh, yeah.
It's broken mine a couple of times. But,
yep.
So at that point, I had to go through a workers' comp case. So this is 2022. That took another year. Again, could not work. Could not volunteer. I literally asked them if I could. The Guide Dog Foundation for the Blind was basically a mile from my house, and I wanted to volunteer there. Could not do that.
You couldn't go help.
Nope. Could not help. Could not do anything. And for a purpose-driven individual, I had zero purpose at that point.
No mission.
Nothing. And
why are you getting up in the morning?
Yeah, essentially, I had a gym I put in my basement, so I was training. But other than that, my wife could see it in me. I was changing a little bit. I was getting a little angry. I was getting a little depressed. I was trying to process these feelings. Additionally, I guess I didn't give it too much credence that I was no longer a part of this thing that I was for 30 years. I was no longer this thing. Yeah. I'm no longer part of the brotherhood. And the camaraderie was the biggest part of the job that I loved.
Trust.
Yeah.
You were around people that you trusted with your life. They had your back.
Exactly. And actually, I never took promotional exams because I didn't want the dynamic of the job to change. I love being on the street.
Yeah.
I love that action portion. I love being with my boys. Mm-hmm. And, truth be told, out of sight, out of mind. The phone's not ringing every day like it used to. And you hear about it, but until you're in that space, it's not really something you give too much thought to. Mm. So, I'm processing that I'm not that happy when I'm waking up, or I could be happy, and a certain thought would get into my head and change my whole mood. And again, consistency. I was not being consistent with my wife. And, maybe I make a nasty comment, and in my head, I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
My wife's the best.
Yeah.
And,
isn't that incredible though? There's a you looking at you saying, what are you doing? So there is somebody in there. That's that soul inside. That's like that perfect soul underneath this shit that's going, bro, what are you doing, man?
Yeah.
I'm in here. You're good. There's good in here. But the shell, 50 some years is just.
You're aware. You just in some form, you're not able to stop it.
That's that ego, man.
Yeah, that ego's a powerful thing.
Yep.
I remember I went to training this past April with GBRS Group, and it's a company owned by former Navy SEALs, and one of which is DJ Shipley. And DJ and I had gotten into a talk about plant-based medicine journeys, and he was saying essentially the same thing. Prior to, I would yell at my kids or say, cross word to my wife and be like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And, since then, everything has changed, and we'll talk about it here in a few minutes, but, it's essentially the same thing. My entire persona, my life, my soul, like everything changed. I became such a different man. And I said, DJ, you're a tier 1 operator, one of the best warriors in the world, but first you're a human being, as am I.
Yeah.
And we teach ourselves to become callous because we can't absorb all this pain.
Correct.
And then we don't feel anything, brother.
Yeah.
That's not the way life is supposed to be lived.
Correct.
And I go, I feel now, and I love it. I'm like, I'm proud of myself as a man. I've cried on camera. I never would have been able to do that prior to. And I'm proud that I was able to do that. And it actually affected people who called me telling them that they had some things going on with them, and seeing me do that
Amen.
told them that it's okay to feel. And one of my good buddies, who I never in a million years would have thought this, said he had, at the time, had a gun in his mouth in a not too distant past. That one blew me away. So you never know, what other guys and girls are going through.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
All right. So past couple years, how'd the medicine formally call you, and then what did you do about it?
Okay. So as I'm going through all these feelings, I'm processing them, but I'm still not able to nail them down as to what I'm going through. And then I'm watching Sean Ryan's podcast one day, and he's interviewing another SEAL named Eddie Penny. He was a former Team 6 guy.
Yep.
He's actually got a company called Unafraid. I have a couple of his shirts. I usually wear them.
Another good dude. Great American.
Yeah, he's it was just an amazing podcast. But Eddie was recounting the story of Extortion 17, in which a Chinook went down. And in addition to all the personnel on the aircraft, 17 SEALs were killed. Just a horrible, horrible incident, one of which being his best friend. And Eddie is recounting the story of him escorting his best friend's body back to his hometown. Visibly upset, rightly so. And as he's telling the story, all that popped in my head was a call I had a few years before, of a 2-year-old found floating in a pool. And I lost it. I started crying like a baby. And my first reaction, this still blows my mind to this day, is I looked in the house to make sure my wife had not come home from shopping because I was embarrassed. I was brought up by a very stern dad, and showing emotion was frowned upon.
Cry.
Exactly. And, you take that into this warrior culture, same thing. Nor, in some respects, can you let yourself feel this pain of all these people that, you're dealing with.
Now you're a machine. You got to execute. You got a mission. You got...
Yep. It's 100% right on. And instantaneously, I'm like, wow, I think I have PTSD. And I thought further about that call because I buried that one deeply. It affected me greatly. And what happened was the baby was... we got there. The baby was pulled out of the pool. Myself and a guy named Billy Steele resuscitated the baby. Billy did a great job. We handed it off to the paramedics. They went right to the hospital with the parents. But I had to stay at that house for the next 3 hours. I'm going to try not to get emotional, but... So, the grandparents, they're in charge of this baby, were there. And they stayed. I was with them for the next 3 hours. And it was through no fault of their own this baby had gotten back in the pool. All the kids had gone back in the basement, and no one knew that the baby knew where this other access door was. So the baby had gotten out by herself and got in the pool.
Christ.
And no one knew how long she was in there for. And the visceral screams and cries that I heard for 3 hours from these grandparents would tear me apart. I've never had this feeling in my life before since I was crawling out of my skin. At one point, I went to walk behind the pool because I started welling up, and I thought I was going to lose it. And I said to myself, it probably would have been the best thing that I could have done. But I'm like, excuse my French, I'm like, fucking pussy. You can't cry. These people see you cry, they're going to lose it even more. And which they wouldn't have even seen me. Yeah, exactly. And I can't let anyone, from work see me crying. Best thing I probably could have done was go behind that pool and lose it. And I remember, I'll give the department this, they provided a chaplain to speak to me the next day. And, if anyone from the department is watching, you guys need to do more than that. Not for me, for other guys, because that was not enough. But although the chaplain was great. But I asked the chaplain, I said, Father, I don't understand. The baby was dead. Why didn't God let her? Because she had a hypoxic brain injury, and she's essentially going to be in a bedridden the rest of her life. Why did God let her be resuscitated? And he's like, Mike, it's a good question. He's like, think of it this way: if she's going to pass, because it was still touch and go, the family has time to grieve and say goodbye. And if she doesn't, it's God's will. It's really nothing that you have a choice on. And I said, all right, I understand the grieving portion, but if God lets it live, I just don't understand that. And I'm sorry if I sound cold, but it was amazing because I felt guilty about us resuscitating her. And then I felt different guilt on top of that because it was not mine to feel guilty about. It was such a mix of emotions. And then on top of that, we received an award And I remember getting a notification. I'm like, a fucking award for this? I don't want an award for this. And it just felt so disrespectful to turn it down because it was the paramedics, not just myself, it was a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And, I showed up and the whole night, my wife and I just thought I'd gotten divorced. My wife and I just started dating. She was very proud of me. I didn't say anything to anyone. I'm like, what am I doing here? Yeah. I just felt so guilty.
Yeah.
And, it just, everything piled on. But to get back to Eddie's story, so I realized that PTSD and I realized I needed help. And I did not think that conventional therapy was going to do it for me. I didn't think I was going to talk to a man or woman behind a desk and tell them things that I had to tell them, things I had done, things I had seen, and they were going to understand or be able to help me.
Yeah.
So, again, I'm listening to these gentlemen talk about these plant-based medicines and how miraculous they were. And I'm like, you know what? Who am I to be a pessimist about this? They're healing these guys.
Yeah.
I
Navy
have
SEALs.
to do it. Yeah.
Navy
SEAL, bunch of special forces guys. I'm like, I have to try this. And it was at that point, I didn't realize you could access any of this treatment in the U.S. So we were my wife and I planned a trip to Peru. We had moved to Florida last December, during the course of which my wife found a center called Soul Quest Ayahuasca in Orlando. And we made our plans, and I sat for my first ayahuasca experience the first weekend of March. And it was the most profound, cathartic thing that's ever happened to me in my life. I don't know how much of the journey you want me to get into.
I'm here for it, man. So because a lot of folks want to know the details because I haven't sat with ayahuasca.
Okay.
So give us the debrief.
Sure.
Yeah.
So just to let everyone know, I was nervous going in. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know how it was going to affect me.
My wife and I have a term, nerve-sighted. You're nervous about the medicine, but you're excited.
Yeah.
It's nerve-sighted.
Yeah, that's a great word. That's exactly what I was.
Nerve-sighted.
Yeah, that's perfect, actually. Give you white props on that.
Yeah.
So we drove down to Orlando on a Friday. So we were going to do 3 ceremonies, Friday night, Saturday day, and then Saturday night. Friday night, we kind of have an orientation. They tell us what to expect, what's going to be going on. And then we go to the ceremonial space in the back. It's decent sized yard. It's they have a fire pit in the middle. There are various speakers on the outside. Probably about at that weekend 35 to 40 people. So there's like alpine chairs lining the outside of the yard, and essentially you're given it's like a shot glass of ayahuasca. And ayahuasca is a combination of 2 vines. They're boiled, and essentially it's the juice of those vines that you're drinking. The fact that ayahuasca was even discovered is incredible because there's 80,000 vines in the Amazon forest, which is where they come from.
To put those two together.
But you have to put those 2 together.
Correct.
Because one is an MAO inhibitor, and if you didn't take that, the psychedelic effects would not work.
Correct.
And the other one creates psychedelic effects.
Individually, they do nothing.
Exactly.
Together.
So the fact that the universe told whomever to use these 2 specific vines should tell everyone all they need to know right then and there. It's beyond miraculous.
Millennia.
Yeah.
Not just like,
this
hey,
is
we
not
found
like 10
this.
years ago. This is
correct.
Hundreds, if not thousands of years these ceremonies have been going on.
Correct.
And I consider this medicine to be super sacred. This is not something, first of all, it's not a drug. It's not something that gets you high because a lot of people think that's the case.
Fun.
No.
It's not recreational.
Fun. No. This is nothing you would ever use recreationally. It is the furthest thing from a drug. So it's a medicine.
It's a medicine.
It is a medicine, plant-based medicine.
Yep.
So, essentially you shoot the drink down. It's not the greatest tasting thing in the world, but it is what it is.
Probably a reason for that.
Yeah.
Oh, it's delicious. Let me just keep.
Exactly.
I think the plants are telling you like
moderation here.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it took about 40 minutes for it to kind of kick in. I was actually getting a little angry because nothing was happening.
Yeah, I'll be the one guy it doesn't work for.
Yeah, please don't tell me this isn't going to work for me. And all of a sudden I could see the ground stop moving. I'm like, oh, here we go.
Buckle up.
Yeah, pretty much. And most people say they detect a female presence with ayahuasca. They call her Mother Ayahuasca. And it was the same for me. So essentially, my experience was, although there were trees in the space and they had 2 buildings that you could go into if you wanted silence, I was looking at essentially a big screen TV. And Mother Ayahuasca was in the top left-hand corner for my journey. And I remember first I was crying a little bit. I'm like, I surrender to you. I literally was not fighting it. Whatever was going to happen to me was going to happen. It was going to take me where I needed to be taken. That's what everyone tells you. Yeah, that's I had
allow, accept.
Yep.
It's interesting because when I started this medicine work, as a police officer or a fighter pilot, surrender, I hated that word. I'm like, fuck you, man. I ain't surrendering. Allow, accept. Because we tend to fight things. We want to be in control.
Exactly.
But if you settle into it and go, hey, Zeus, take the wheel, good things will happen.
Exactly. And that was my mindset. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen.
Yeah.
And I remember kind of throwing my hands up. I'm like, I surrender to you. Please tell me what I have to do. I'm like, I need to lose this ego, this rage, this anger. I don't want to be this man. And it was almost as if everything that I requested, when I requested, bam, was granted. Like I could feel myself getting lighter. It's so hard to describe.
Yeah.
People listening to this, you're like, yeah, okay.
Oh, man.
This is the way it happened.
Yep.
Straight up, honest to God, I'm not a flower child. I am an alpha male.
Yep.
And I had, in one way I was pessimistic. I didn't think it was going to be this healing experience that it was.
Of course.
Blew me away. I remember specifically, too, I was watching the volunteers work, and they are there for us. Anything we need, they are there for, and they're so loving. And I'm watching them. I'm like, man, these people are so graceful, so loving, so empathetic. And I was asking her, Mother, I want to be a more empathetic man. And it's funny because when I say this, my wife's like, you were empathetic. Don't think you weren't. You sound like a monster. I'm like, no, I understand that, baby, but I wanted to be more empathetic. Isn't
that interesting? Susie said the same thing about me because I've beaten myself up for everything, who I was and everything before the medicine. She's like, stop, man. You weren't,
Yeah.
I mean, everything's kind of better or great now, but it's enough because you and I, we're the type that those alpha with the uniform on that we'll be our own worst critic.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
ain't going to out criticize me. I'm the pilot in command of this airplane.
Absolutely.
And she's like, stop. So I'm the same with you.
Yeah,
Thank God for our beautiful brides because they'll pull us up a little bit. Like, stop.
Yeah, exactly.
You weren't Adolf Hitler, for God's sakes. Relax.
Exactly. It's exactly how she is. And looking back, I said, I don't think I was, maybe, but my heart was just empty.
Correct.
And I remember actually when we were getting married, I wrote my vows. And I said, I thought I was broken to where I couldn't feel anything until I met you and fell in love with you.
Oh, amen.
And that's truly
great.
the way I felt. I thought I was broken inside and couldn't be resurrected, so to speak. So, again, during the course of the journey, I'm asking her for this, for that. And I'm like, listen, I used to be this warrior and I have this fire, but it's still here and I don't need it there anymore. And she literally told me, she's like, as I'm going through the experience and everything's kind of lessening, just the weight I had on me, I could just feel it getting thrown off. And she told me, she's like, you still have this fire. It'll always be within you. If you need it, you could call on it. You'll always be a warrior, but you don't have to have it up here. It's down here now. And everything that comes with that is also down here. And I remember that clear as day.
Wow.
And then one very powerful thing was my father and I had a very contentious relationship growing up. We never close. He was a very stern guy. Looking back when I really got introspective about our relationship, he was brought up in a very non-loving household, and he didn't really know how to show affection. And, these are a couple of generations ago as
trauma.
well. Yeah, so he was bringing that generational trauma with him, kind of heaping it on me. And Mother Ayahuasca was bringing him to me in my experience. He's deceased. And it was the craziest thing because there's music going on in the ceremony, but in my journey, the music is now building up and building up. It's getting louder and louder, and it was not in reality. And finally, it just builds to this crescendo, and it was not in reality, and it just stopped. And in reality, the music was still going on in
the background. Yep.
And it was like I was in front of the biggest Las Vegas marquee, and I could feel people behind me just like watching this spectacle. It was like a showdown between me and my father. It wasn't going to be anything physical. Just we were going to have a mental showdown, so to speak. And I'm waiting, and he doesn't show. And I remember I threw my hand up in the air. I'm like, coward, man. I knew he wasn't going to show. He would never speak about emotion. But those 55 years at the time I was 55 just got lifted like instantaneously. It was gone. To this day, I still have no words to explain the process. And I came out of it, and let me preface this by saying that 2 co-workers from my Suffolk County Police Department had committed suicide 3 weeks before, a week apart. Sergeant committed suicide in the locker room in the precinct.
Oh my God.
And I had no thoughts about getting into the space that I am now in, but as I'm coming out of the journey, as clearly as you and I are talking, the universe told me, you are healed. Now, we are still healing. It's an ever-evolving process, but she said, you heal from your PTSD. Your life's pursuit is now to go forth and help other first responders and vets and heal them. And I literally said, okay, just okay.
I got it.
And I wasn't sure how I was going to implement that at the time. But I remember a guy I just met prior to drinking. He had gone in one of those quiet buildings, came back out, and he's like, how was your journey? And I'm like, good, brother. I just was told what the rest of my life is going to be about. I just have my new life's purpose. He's like, well, that's a good journey.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. And it was just incredible. I remember going back to my wife and telling her what had happened. They tell spouses not to sit next to each other, so she was on the other side.
Yeah, they keep you apart.
Yeah, having her own experience. And we then sat Saturday and Saturday night. It wasn't as profound. I wasn't really getting that much hallucinogenic effects. Very peaceful. And throughout my journey, the warrior theme just kept coming up multiple times. Happened, I think, 5 out of my 7 times that I've consumed ayahuasca. I'm with American Indians, and they're dressing me up because we're going into battle. And on one particular night, which was the most intense night of my life, it was a couple of months later, it was this past May. It's funny, like I was staring at this fire that was going on, and people the next day were commenting they've never seen like intensity like this in their life. And there was no anger, there was no rage. It was just pure intensity. The universe and I were talking the whole night. And at one point, I never walk around my shirt off. I had a sweatshirt and a shirt on. I didn't even realize I took it off. My wife looked over and sees me shirtless. She's like, whoa, it's going to be that type of night, huh? I stood up. There was a space heater. It was like that far from me. And I had my arms open, looking up at the universe. I should have been like getting burned, but I felt like the fire was fueling my soul. And the universe was just giving me messages like, wow, no matter when you would have been born, you would have been a warrior. Just your mentality. And I put you through everything, and I put you through for a reason. You're here on the other side to go help people. Yeah. And, I always kid around, like call myself a meathead the way I look, tats and, size or whatever. But she's like, I made you like this for a reason. You could get on stage and these people are going to look at you. Amen. And they're going to listen to your message.
Correct.
And I literally, we're talking and I'm like, all right, I'm a vessel. I will do whatever you want me to do. Yeah. And it was just so powerful and just reinforced the message that this is my purpose on earth now.
You're not this shell. You're what's underneath it.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
Wow, man. I wrote down the word apostle the day after my ibogaine experience, and I had no idea what that word meant in my journal. Now I do. Sounds like you got the same thing.
Yeah.
You were given orders.
I was, literally.
To go put the ladder down.
Gladly accepted them.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Gladly.
It's so funny, man, because, when I got back from my ibogaine and my toad experience, and I'm like, because I went direct to that. Yep. I had no clue what ayahuasca. Never heard of any of these things. So when I got back and I heard people like, oh yeah, I sat with ayahuasca about like 10, 20 times. I'm like, for the love of God and all things holy, that sounds like an absolute nightmare because I'm used to ibogaine in a 12 to 14 hour one-man luge where you're not moving. And then as I talk to more people who've done ayahuasca, I'm like, okay, I get it. What was it? Was it like 3 to 4 hours peak, or what's your time frame?
So I would say you peak, or I peaked about 2 hours in, and then they give you a booster.
Okay.
So you go back in deep, and it's probably another 2 hours. So essentially, the journey's about, for me, it's usually like 4.5 hours.
Okay.
Some people are longer.
That's close to psilocybin too. So about 4 hours. That's why it always, we talked about earlier about the medicine calling to you. Aya hasn't called to me. I don't know if it will or yet, but man, that sounds a little bit more gentlemanly than a 12 to 14 hour experience.
Yes.
Talk about, because I know my beautiful bride, Susie, she's like, because we've looked into Aya and stuff like that. They actually, on some of the places we've looked at, they actually build in the flight schedule, like, 7 to 7:15 purging. She's like, I don't know if I want to sit with a medicine where they actually on the flight schedule say like scheduled purging. Did you purge at all? And what was that like?
I purged.
Because a lot of people, getting sick, throwing up is what, quote, normies, we're medicine guys. Normies think purging is where it's not. It's an energy release. Talk to us through that.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you're essentially throwing up, but spiritually you're getting rid of things that serve you no longer. Essentially the poison in your soul. One thing I found, the times vary, so I don't know how anyone could pinpoint down times.
Yeah, purging time.
Yeah. Thank God I never get nauseous. But essentially I can feel something like in the pit of my stomach, and I'll just grab the can. Usually it's like 4 to 5 times, put it down, and I'm done. Mine usually occur about an hour into it, maybe an hour and 15 minutes. There was one point during one of my journeys where I could not, so I asked Mother if she could help me. And as soon as I asked for it, all I could smell was ayahuasca. And I literally purged like a minute later. It was incredible to me that I was given what I had asked for at that point.
That's a big takeaway. Is the medicine? First of all, the medicine will give you what you need, not necessarily what you want. But many times throughout these experiences, Susie, Iboga, some pretty tough times. She said, Mother Iboga, help me. And she said everything stopped, and a beautiful angelic face just came right in front of her. And she felt so much peace and went away, and everything stopped. So it's so cool that people have these types of experiences. Because to me, the medicine's giving you, it's almost like a court case. It can't be like that quick. Like you take Aya and you love your wife and your kids go home and be a better man. It's like a court case.
Yeah.
It builds this, shows you some bad, shows you the good, and then it brings you to this crescendo. But along the way, if you need a little time out from the presentation, you can ask for it.
Yeah.
And it'll give you a little bit of a break. Like, hey, man, I kind of need a little help right now. Whoop.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, all right. Thank you.
Yeah. So when you take Aya, it's not like you go into this dream state and you're there forever. You'll come in and out. So
that's what I hear. Waves.
Yeah, it is waves. And, if you have to get up and go to the bathroom, you walk to the bathroom, use the bathroom, come back. It's not like, I think, I don't know how Ibogaine was, but is it something where you essentially you're kind of...
I didn't move for 12 to 14 hours.
That's what I've heard.
JT and some of the guys, you're like a giraffe on roller skates, man. You need to be helped because it's a big. It's really big. But yeah, you can maneuver if you need to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now we've experienced Bufo as well. We journey with Bufo. Bufo, you have to surrender. That's an immediate.
You don't have a choice.
Yeah, you're immediately in that thing in 15 seconds.
0.02 seconds.
Wow. That was a profound journey. And
that's its own medicine. That's its own prep. You could do just a retreat on Bufo.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm still integrating 3 years after my Bufo experience. I mean, I died. Ego death, but I mean, I need to clean that up because people are like, oh my God. I'm like, yeah. Because with the time we have left, I want to focus, let's backtrack a little bit on former law enforcement officer doing ayahuasca. How do you feel about law enforcement? Because, I get messages from I got state troopers, I got U.S. Marshals, guys and gals that are on active duty who want to do these medicines under the radar to heal. Could you imagine? Would you have been a better cop showing up to a call at peace with yourself instead of...
Absolutely.
I mean, could you imagine policing today if people... I'm good friends with Sarko. He's a lieutenant just north of Boston. I forget the name of the town. He's a police lieutenant, but he took part in the MAPS MDMA protocol.
Oh, okay.
He approved. His department approved it.
Right.
I got, Chicken and some Denver firefighters. It's legal in Colorado. They've been approved to be... The department's okay with it, even though it's federally illegal. How do you feel about law enforcement officers and the medicine?
I think everyone in the world should drink Aya. When you reach a certain age,
Amen.
There'd be no wars.
I tell people that, man, they don't believe me. I'm like, if I could kidnap Putin and Zelensky and put them on an Aya retreat or an Iboga retreat after a weekend, they would be best friends.
Absolutely.
I'm not fucking around. No. That's not a joke. That's not a stretch. They would see each other as souls and not the shells. Right?
Exactly. 100%.
And folks, let's take a quick break, man. Look at us. Navy fighter pilot, law enforcement officer of 30 years. we just talk like that.
Yeah,
Can you believe this?
Yeah.
I mean,
No.
And we're not wearing our drug rugs. We're not hippies. This is, he's from New York. I'm from Jersey. The world would be a much better place if you sat with some of these medicines. And these medicines have been provided, insert your word here. I choose to use the word God. Source put this stuff on this planet for us to heal.
Exactly.
Why aren't we doing it?
Exactly.
And why is it illegal? Well, we can all probably answer that.
Oh, yeah. Well, it cracks me up. There's such a stigma. But I did a reel about this. On one ayahuasca retreat I was at with first responders, I was speaking to a retired Green Beret who had been on 17 different meds. There's no stigma for that. You know?
Exactly.
And another Army Corpsman who was on 11. No stigma for that.
Yeah, correct.
You know, these poor guys aren't able to feel anything. I've never been on SSRIs or antidepressants, but in speaking to people, it's pretty much the same effect.
Yeah.
They don't feel anything.
Yeah.
There's no stigma for that. You know, and they cause so many people to commit suicide. No stigma for that.
Correct.
Yet there's a stigma for psilocybin or ayahuasca, you know, things that won't even be abused ever.
You can't.
Yeah, exactly. You wouldn't.
don't want
There'd
to.
be there'd be no reason to do it. It's not going to. It just doesn't affect you like that.
Yeah.
It's not this euphoric feeling that you're walking around with all day.
Yeah.
Yeah, but essentially, there's a stigma for that. And to answer your question about law enforcement, I've encouraged guys who are current law enforcement to take it because there's no, as long as you keep it to yourself, DMT is out of your system in 48 hours.
Correct.
There's
I don't think there's a drug test for DMT because you have DMT in your pineal gland.
Yeah, there is no test for it.
There's DMT in your body.
Exactly. So there's no test. You don't have to worry about it. The one caveat I would issue is that I've had a couple of guys in the military who have clearances and they get polygraphed. So do not take it if you're going to get polygraphed because that could pop.
So I've talked to a couple team guys who got out, did the medicine, working with an alphabet agency, and they told the truth. Guess what happened?
I'm going to guess
got a couple phone calls like, hey, what's the name of the place you went and the phone number and who can I talk to? And they were actually fine. They actually said,
really?
Oh, yeah.
That's
so I
great.
know 2 confirmed cases of told the truth and it was, I had no problem with
That's
it.
great news.
That is great
I love
news.
hearing that.
Yeah. Truth is truth, man.
Yeah.
Let me tell you the truth.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
had problems as a SEAL. You want me to go work for your alphabet agency? I healed. And they said, you know what? Thanks, first of all, for being honest. And what's the point of contact?
Oh, absolutely. But historically, they didn't want to hear that you had problems.
No.
That's the thing. You keep it to yourself. And
You're a
no
machine.
one wants to hear that.
Yeah.
Exactly. Same in policing. Come up with problems. First thing you do is pull your gun and badge.
Oh, my
There's
God,
a stigma,
man.
and that's why guys and girls don't want to go. I think things are changing now. Procedures are changing. They realize that's the biggest impediment to guys and girls seeking help is the stigma and the fact they're going to get their guns taken. Now it's a changing landscape, thank God.
Same thing in the cockpit, man. You can't raise your hand as an aviator and say there's something wrong. Done.
Yeah.
Years going through the FAA medical process or anything like that until you can even get near the cockpit again, which would make sense, but it also doesn't make sense to have that immediate knee-jerk reaction to that. So we've helped a lot of airline guys and gals under the radar. I asked the flying public, would you rather have your captain or first officer continue to lie, self-medicate, drink, do drugs, and hide everything, or go take a week off and go down to Mexico to heal their mind, body, and soul?
Exactly.
Which one would you choose?
Yeah.
And I know 99.9% of what the population would choose. But yeah, there's that stigma of all of this stuff. But that's why you and I are here doing this. I want to, a couple minutes left. I want to go back to the 2-year-old in the pool for a second because I want to share something with you that as I was hanging on your every word because on the medicine, I went into the medicine with 5 questions and 5 intentions for the medicine. My guy did a great job. I treat it like a combat hop, man.
Right.
This is a mission. I had mission objectives and everything like that. Everything was answered. Everything. Except, and it was kind of cool because God, he's like, you good, man. Let me take that backpack that full of rocks, the 100-pound weight I got it. That's not yours anymore. And it was almost like, any other type of questions moment. And I remember going, no, I think I'm good. You got it. And then I stopped and I said, wait, whoa. And I said, why Monica? Why my sister? Why 19? Why so young?
Hardcore.
Destroyed my family, my dad, even though I got to see him, and he, and God looked at me and he said, I know. Trust me. And I felt at peace.
It's amazing.
I trust, right? So same thing with the 2-year-old. Why? God just gently looked at me and said, I know, buddy. I know. Trust me. And I did. And I do to this day. It made all the difference. Trust. I do trust. And that was one of the most healing moments of my life because I was angry for most of my life. Tell us where we can find you. Tell us what your current mission is, all that type of stuff.
Sure.
For everybody who's watching and listening.
So my Instagram platform is pretty much where I launch everything. It's Team Morgs Inc. It's TEAM_MORGS_INC. So anything I'm doing, I announce there. I'm actually having a live tonight with a man named Zach Ferguson. He's a retired Navy SEAL. And we're going to be talking about mental health awareness and our individual plant-based medicine journeys because he was healed by ayahuasca as well. It's crazy the way social media works. I had seen a podcast he had done 5 days ago. I did a reel on my Instagram referencing his. He saw mine, commented on it. We exchanged a bunch of DMs. He's the nicest, most humble guy. And I said, would you be interested in doing a live? He said, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing, and this is true. My life has changed since my ayahuasca journey. Number one, I'm just on a higher consciousness. My entire way of thinking has changed. But the caliber of people that are being introduced to my life, like yourself, is incredible. Everyone's got pure hearts, no agendas, and it's so refreshing to see, especially from a cop who's lied to, speaking to
every day.
95% of the people that I spoke to in my 30-year career. Just met a guy named Garrett Hornell. He's got a consulting company here. He knows a bunch of people I know. You know him.
Yep.
We're probably going to collaborate. It's such a noble effort that each of us are doing. Your efforts are incredible, and I hope you stop and pat yourself on the back. And I'm not pandering to you. Like what you do, the No Fallen Heroes organization is incredible.
I appreciate
especially that you're including family members. I mean, you're saving lives. You're literally saving lives. And I'll tell people, you save one life. It's like a spider web in a windshield.
Yep.
You affect so many people. Just think of those children not having to go through it. That creates drug addicts, prostitutes, human trafficking, because these kids have to find their love elsewhere. Suicides, generational trauma. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Yeah.
Just think about any funeral or wake that you attend. It could be natural causes, but all those people are affected by that death. Yeah. And you replace that with healing, and now no one's going through any of it.
Correct.
It is so profound. Yeah. And, I try to promote your organization as much as possible because it's incredible what you're doing. Yeah. Absolutely.
You're right, bro. You save one life. The impact on the world, it's immeasurable.
It is.
I try and go on, as many retreats as I can, but if I can't, I invariably get a text from a retreat from a grant recipient, Wiz, I don't want to kill myself anymore. I'm like, forget about it. I mean, are you insane that this is, it's humbling, and I'm so honored to have met you. Anything I can do to help you and your cause.
Absolutely.
You got any first responders, any Leos or family members need help, you send them my way, man. Top right of nofallenheroes.com. It says grant request application. We will hook. If this is work, I want to do it for the rest of my life, man.
Yeah. In one way, it feeds into your ego because you feel so good when someone says you actually saved their life. It is so powerful. But every time it happens, and it's happened multiple times in a short period of time, I'm like, this is the path I'm supposed to be on.
It's so humbling too, because you go, I think I'm depriving a village somewhere of an idiot. But, when something like that happens, I'm like, oh, my God, man. Every once in a while I sit there and go, why me?
I'm like, who am I?
Yeah, I'm an idiot.
But you know what? If I'm that vessel that the universe is going to use, I'm fine with it. Put me in for that reason.
Yeah. If not me, who? If not now, when?
So. I'll be as vulnerable as I could be to show these men and women that it takes strength to feel emotion, show emotion.
Amen. Yeah.
I have no problem. Anything that I've ever screwed up in my life, I'm honest about. I'm genuine. I just want, when I walk into a room, for them to realize, like, this guy is no BS. Yeah. He's been in my shoes. He understands me. I could tell him anything, and he will help me. I'll do my best.
I love it. My brother, so here's your coin. This is our No Fallen Heroes Foundation Psychedelic Fighter Pilot coin. right there. Thank you. And then you got the wrong hat on, man. So there's your
I will definitely sport it, and I'm looking still to get some shirts. There's no XLs.
You're probably a 2XL.
Or 2X. Yeah.
I will get you a 2XL because one of the guys I did with the medicine and first time, Robert Gallery, he was an All-American in Iowa.
Iowa, yep.
Yeah, played it for the Raiders.
Yep.
And
monster.
Huge dude.
Yeah, I remember him.
Incredible human being. So I had to order a 2X. I might actually have some at home. I'll take a look for you though.
Nice.
And I'll hook you up. So, ladies and gentlemen, Michael Morgan, check him out at team_morg_inc.
Yep.
On Instagram. He's an incredible human being. Maybe we'll get Susie and your bride to talk about her medicine experience too, if she'd be up for it.
Yeah, she's into the higher consciousness. She's a life coach as well. She's occupied a space for years. It wasn't my deal at the time. I never, made fun or ridicule or anything like that. It just wasn't my deal. Now it is my deal. So it's more incredible that she and I are in this space together.
It's almost like somebody had a plan for that to happen.
Exactly.
Amen.
Isn't that funny how that happens?
My brother, ladies and gentlemen, Michael Morgan joining us in the studio for the Max Afterburner podcast. You heard us talk. If the medicine calls to you, it's calling you. If you listen to this podcast or watch it and it just ain't calling to you, and that's okay too. So, ladies and gentlemen, have a great rest of your day. Happy hunting. Make sure you're hedged. Fights on. Namaste. Basi, whiz, and Morg out.